That's it. Yeah, so we are good to go. We are live on all the channels. I have admitted all the invitees who have joined in till now on Zoom, on the Zoom channel. And we are getting audience on the social channels of Sampriti as well. So, namaskar. A very happy New Year, though it is 16th today. Nevertheless, this is the first time we are meeting on the Anita Dialogues, and perhaps I should say in a sense of melancholy, this is the final episode of the Anita Dialogue for the purpose that it was started. Today is the 12th and the final episode of a journey that we started last year towards the commemoration of Netaji's 125th birth anniversary. And I heartily welcome all the audience on this Zoom channel here. I am Shoaib Al-Giri, President, Sampriti München EV. We are hosting this. And I am very, very privileged always, and doubly so this time. I will tell you the reason why, to have with me the person by whose name this event is being held. Welcome, Dr. Anita Puff, and together with her, welcome Dr. Martin Puff as well. Hello. Today is a very special day and hence a very special event. So without further ado, Dr. Puff, I will leave this floor to you because I wish you to help us talk a few words about what we have done and achieved so far in this 125th year of your father's birthday. And of course, the special significance and the special guests that we have for today's episode.
Thank you very much, Shoaib, and welcome to all of you who are participating. Meetings in the series of the Anita Dialogues. This is the last one to round it up. And I'm very pleased that my nephew, Professor Sugata Bose, agreed to be our chief guest here today. Because for a variety of reasons, which you will learn, it is very appropriate that he should be participating, particularly on this day. We purposely chose not to have the meeting on the 23rd of January because we always wanted to refer to specific other than the birthday occasions during all these months. And today is a very important date, or was a very important date in my father's life in 1941, as Professor Sugata Bose will tell us later on. I'm very pleased also that the expert is present. Hello, Lenny. Good to see you. Hello. And I hope that those of you who have participated in a number of the previous events have either been reminded of some of the familiar things or have learned some new aspects of my father's life. I think it was a very appropriate way of honoring him on the occasion of his 125th birth anniversary. And I'm thankful for those who participate, that they certainly are persons who I think not only admire and respect my father, and many of them also love him, but that there are also people who believe in the validity of most of his values and ideas. And I think we can certainly say that even 125 years after he was born, 75 years after India became independent, we have to realize that many of his ideas have not lost their relevancy. On the contrary, that some of the developments in India, but also throughout the world, are of a nature that can be potentially harmful for not only the people of one country, but humanity. I'm talking about the divisive forces which have been on the rise in many of the countries, and I believe that they are quite dangerous. And India, of course, has her own aspect of divisive forces. And if we think of Netaji and the INA, I think we can certainly say that they had a very different blueprint in mind for their country. So let me leave it at that. I hope you will enjoy today's meeting.
Thank you. Those are inspirational words, and I think is a good summary of what we have we started or embarked upon doing. Incidentally, also on a landmark date of 7th of February in 2021, that is last year, and on that date as well was a date on which Netaji started or about to embark on that perilous submarine ride. So two thrilling episodes of his life, one in episode 1 and the other in today's episode, is a kind of the markers that has defined this 12 episodes on his 125th anniversary run, which we have tried to use to decipher his life and legacy. As Dr. Paf said, who else but Dr. Sugata Bose, who is with us today, is the person who can help us bring more insights and information into that life and legacy that we have been trying to discover. It is only apt that we have had him in this last session in order to ensure that we are able to summarize the total life's achievements and milestones that we have seen through the last 11 episodes. By invitation, and quite a few people of Sampriti as well as the YouTube channel. Dr. Sugata Bose is the Gardiner Professor of Oceanic History and Affairs at the Harvard University. He has served as the Director of Graduate Studies in History at Harvard and as the founding director of Harvard's South Asia Institute. He was educated, like his predecessors, in the Presidency College, Calcutta, and the University of Cambridge, where he obtained his PhD. He was a fellow at St. Catherine's College, Cambridge, and professor of history and diplomacy at the Tufts University before taking up the Gardiner Chair at Harvard in 2001. He has many books to his credit: 100 Horizons, The Indian Ocean in the Age of the Global Empire, Modern South Asia, History, Culture, Political Economy with Aisha Jalal. He has also, together with his father, given a lot of effort in bringing to the fore the collected works of Netaji, the 12-volume work, and the joint editor with his mother, Krishna Bose, of Purobi, the East in its feminine gender, translations of Tagore by his maternal uncle, Charuchandra Chaudhary. He has made 3 documentary films on the history and politics of Southern Asia. And no, I have not forgotten, Dr. Bose. Your most famous work that I personally consider is the book, His Majesty's Opponent, the definitive work and the biography of Netaji that came up in the last decade, and that has thrown a lot of new light and insights through the research that this book has brought out. Dr. Sugata Bose also served as the Member of Parliament in India in the 16th Lok Sabha, 2014 to 2019. He was elected from the Jadavpur constituency in Bengal, and his eloquent speeches in defense of democracy has made a wide impact. Dr. Sugata Bose, once more, a warm welcome, and the floor is all yours. Your background is a giveaway. Nevertheless, we are eager to hear about today's incident.
He is muted.
You are muted. Yes. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Bose, now?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shoaib Giri, for inviting me. I'm truly delighted to present at the final episode of the Dialogues named after my very dear Auntie Anita. I'm joining you from Netaji Bhavan in Calcutta on a very historic day. My father, let me see if I can share my screen so that I can show you some.
Yeah.
Hang on, it's not it. Can you now see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's very good.
Mohanish Raman.
That's right. Okay, excellent. My father, Shishir Kumar Bose's 1943 diary opens with this entry. 23rd January, Saturday, 1943. Ranga Kaka Babu's birthday. What an auspicious day for our people. A sacred day for all of us. 46 years lived as life should be lived. Shishir was not alone in feeling immense pride in Netaji's achievements, but the most glorious phase in his uncle's life was yet to begin. The next few entries read as follows. 26th January, Independence Day. 28th January, attended a practical class in pharmacology for the first time since my release. Liked it. 29th January, another visit by a police officer, served with a fresh order of restraint to be in force for a period of 1 year. 2nd February, Tuesday, 1943. My birthday. I'm 23 today. The 23rd year has been for me a year of trials and suffering. Street accidents, police assault, imprisonment without trial, serious illness, all crowded into a period of about 8 months. Add to the physical suffering, mental unrest and anxiety. But in spite of everything, the year has been a year of valuable experiences in various directions. Moreover, I have a feeling that I have come through all this a better man. The future may not be an easy one, but is certainly pregnant with great possibilities. I'm full of hope as I step into my 24th year. Father is in prison. Mother is suffering, but continues to show, as usual, her silent courage and fortitude. My father's life had taken a dramatic turn in December 1940. He was looking fresh, although paler and thinner than his usual self. Shishir Kumar Bose writes, of his radiant uncle, Rangakaka Babu. Only his bushy, half-grown beard appeared odd. He was reclining against pillows on his wooden bed. Beckoning Shishir to sit on his bed to his right, Subhas Chandra Bose looked into his young nephew's eyes with an intense gaze and asked in Bengali, "Amar ekta kaj korte parbe?" The kaj, work, Shishir would have to do was to help the revolutionary leader plan and execute his escape from India to achieve his goal of raising an army of liberation abroad. Since early July 1940, Subhas Chandra Bose had been lodged in Presidency Jail of Calcutta. In November, he went on hunger strike, telling the British government, "Release me, or I shall refuse to live." The individual must die so that the nation may live, he wrote in his political testament on November 26, 1940. "Today, I must die so that India may live and may win freedom and glory." On December 5th, 1940, Subhas was sent in an ambulance to his home at 38/2 Elgin Road to be kept under strict police and intelligence surveillance. John Herbert, governor of Bengal, told Viceroy Linlithgow in New Delhi that the government had adopted a cat and mouse policy towards Subhas Chandra Bose and that he would be rearrested as soon as he recovered his health. The charges under the Defense of India rules and the 2 pending cases against him had not been withdrawn. Subhas was stretchered into his room on the middle floor of the 3-storied traditional home built by his father, Janakinath Bose, in 1909-1910. Janakinath's ornate 4-poster bed lay empty, as Subhas preferred a simpler wooden cot. Subhas's mother, Prabhavati, lived in an adjoining room. On December 5th, Subhas had warmly clasped his nephew Shishir's hand for an unusually long time, but did not say anything. And then, on the afternoon of Sunday, December 8th, Shishir received his uncle's summons and walked across from his father's home at 1 Woodburn Park to be assigned a huge responsibility. He was to help his uncle formulate a foolproof plan of escape. The confabulations between uncle and nephew to perfect the plan continued for more than a month. 2 family cars were considered as the escape vehicle. One was an American-made Studebaker President, but it was too easily recognizable as Sharat Chandra Bose's car. The choice fell on the Wanderer that was manufactured in 1937 by the Outer Union of Germany and was registered in Shishir's name. In the 3rd week of December 1940, Netaji's close associate, Mia Akbar Shah, arrived in Calcutta from the northwest frontier province. Subhas introduced Mia Akbar Shah to Shishir, and the 2 went to Wachel Molla's shop in central Calcutta to make purchases for Subhas's disguise as Md Ziauddin. Akbar Shah was instructed to receive Subhas in Peshawar and arrange for his onward journey to Kabul. Now, for 40 years after that, Shishir Bose and Akbar Shah could not meet. In 1947, the country was partitioned into India and Pakistan. Finally, when I was a fellow of St. Catherine's College at the University of Cambridge, I heard that Akbar Shah was coming to visit his son in a place called Walsall near Birmingham. My parents, Shishir Kumar Bose and Krishna Bose, were visiting me in Cambridge, so I drove them all the way to meet Akbar Shah. And after more than 4 decades, the 2 of them met and embraced. It was a very emotional reunion for the 2 of them. On Christmas Day, 1940, Shishir was given an endurance test by Subhas to drive to Bardhaman and back to Calcutta. On December 29, 1940, Mahatma Gandhi wrote to Subhas, "You are irrepressible, whether ill or well. Do get well before going in for fireworks." The letter was duly intercepted, as with all other correspondence, at the Elgin Road post office and copied by the government before being delivered. Subhas Chandra Bose was briefed by Subhas about the escape plan as soon as he returned to Calcutta from a vacation. One evening, Shishir drove his cousin sister Ila to the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar on Subhas's instruction to quietly seek the Divine Mother's blessings for their endeavor. On the evening of January 16, 1941, exactly 81 years ago, Subhas announced at a ritualistic dinner with family members that he would meditate in seclusion for a few days and should not be disturbed. To hoodwink the British, it was unfortunately necessary to deceive relatives, including Subhas's elderly mother. On the night of January 16, 17, 1941, at 1:35 a.m., Subhas Chandra Bose, disguised as Md Ziauddin, tiptoed out of his bedroom, walked the entire length of the north-south corridor, and came down the rear staircase where Shishir had parked the Wanderer car. Subhas sat on the left-hand side of the rear seat. Shishir took the driver's seat, banged the door shut, started the engine, and drove out of the house in the most natural fashion. He took a turn to the right on Elgin Road and again south on Allenby Road, now renamed Shishir Kumar Bose Sharani, before changing course towards the north. He drove all night along the Grand Trunk Road through Howrah, Chandanagar, Bardhaman, and the forest around Durgapur. They talked about many things, including De Valera's escape from Lincoln Jail. In the morning, they reached Barari near Dhanbad that was in the morning of 17th. Subhas was kept hidden in Shishir's elder brother Ashok's bungalow in Barari during the day. Once night fell on January 17th, 1941, the Wanderer resumed its journey to Gomo railway station. "I'm off, you go back," Subhas said as he took his leave. Shishir saw him cross the overbridge with his usual majestic gait before disappearing into the darkness. The Delhi Kalka mail arrived at the station from the direction of Calcutta. Shishir waited until he heard the train steam off and then saw a garland of lights moving away and away to the rhythmic clatter of moving wheels. In Delhi, Subhas took the frontier mail to Peshawar, where he was received by Mian Akbar Shah. At Awad Khan's home, he learned Pathan etiquette as Md Ziauddin was transformed from a North Indian Muslim gentleman to a deaf-mute Pathan. Here you see my mother, Krishna Bose, with Awad Khan's son, Muhammad Siraj, on her left during a visit to Peshawar in 2005. She's standing in front of the Peshawar Cantonment Railway Station. On January 26, 1941, Subhas Chandra Bose, in his new disguise, crossed the border of the British Raj into tribal territory. That same day, his food at 38/2 Elgin Road was left uneaten, and Subhas Chandra Bose announced his disappearance to the whole world. Accompanied by Bhagat Ram Talwar, who used the pseudonym Rahmat Khan, Subhas Chandra Bose trekked across difficult terrain to reach Kabul on January 31st, 1941. The next month and a half was spent in great tension in a city of international intrigue and espionage. On February 22nd, 1941, Subhas Chandra Bose met Pietro Quaroni, the Italian ambassador, who was deeply impressed by the Indian leader and agreed to help him. 5 days later, the British intercepted and decoded an Italian cable that gave them a hint that their inveterate opponent may well be in Kabul. Britain's Special Operations Executive told its agents in Istanbul and Cairo in early March that Bose was believed to be traveling from Afghanistan via Iran, Iraq, and Turkey to Germany, and instructed them to wire what arrangements they could make for his assassination. Fortunately, Subhas Chandra Bose did not take the Middle Eastern route. High-level diplomatic negotiations between Germany and the Soviet Union resulted in Moscow giving him a transit visa to travel through Russia to Berlin. Assuming the Italian identity of Orlando Mazzotta, Subhas Chandra Bose departed Kabul by car on March 18, 1941, and traveling through Central Asia, took a train from Samarkand to Moscow. After spending a couple of days in the Soviet capital, he flew from Moscow to Berlin on April 2nd, 1941. "You will be surprised to get this letter from me," he wrote the next day to his wife, Emily Schenkel, in Vienna, "and even more surprised to know that I am writing this from Berlin." 2.5 millennia ago, Gautama had left home to emerge as a Buddha. The Mahanishkraman of 1941 signaled the transformation of Subhas Chandra Bose into Netaji, the revered leader of the last war of Indian independence. The future with great possibilities that my father wrote about on his 23rd birthday was unfolding in distant Europe during the early days of February 1943. Abid Hassan was simply told to pack his bags and was not given any inkling of his destination. And thought he might be sent to Mecca as part of a scheme to find anti-colonial recruits during the Hajj. It was only when he met Netaji at Lehrter Bahnhof that he realized he would be accompanying his leader. On the train from Berlin to Kiel, Netaji asked Abid Hassan, "Now, do you know where you're going?" "Yes," Hassan replied, "I know where we are going." "Where are we going?" Netaji inquired. "We are both going to perform Hajj." Abid Hassan commented wryly, eliciting from his leader peals of laughter. The historical significance of Netaji's submarine voyage is underscored by the British response to another crucial development in India on February 9th, 1943. This was the commencement of Mahatma Gandhi's fast that was to keep Indians on tenterhooks for 3 weeks. The British government had decided that if Gandhi fasted, he would be allowed to die. Flush with the victories at El Alamein and Stalingrad, Churchill was of the clear opinion that, quote, "This our hour of triumph everywhere in the world was not the time to crawl before a miserable old man who had always been our enemy," unquote. Netaji had given solid support to Mahatma Gandhi's call for the Quit India movement and now was prepared to take the fight to the British in Asia. Now, 1943 was an absolutely extraordinary year in Netaji's life. At the beginning of that year, Netaji was still in Europe. And yet, during the latter half of the year, he galvanized the Indian freedom movement in Southeast Asia. Here he's taking the salute as Supreme Commander of the Indian National Army. He proclaimed the Azad Hind government in Singapore on the 21st of October. And then in November, he enthralled the Greater East Asia Conference in Tokyo as India's head of state. Back in Calcutta, in December 1943, Shishir recorded the death of the family matriarch. 29th December 1943, Majanuni passes away, midnight. Before the close of 1943, Netaji's secret agents had already reached Calcutta. One group landed with sophisticated wireless equipment, weapons, and money on the Kathiawar coast of Gujarat on the night of December 22nd, 23rd, 1943. Late in December, Bhagavan Lu, under the cover of his pseudonym T.K. Rao, called at Woodburn Park in Calcutta to see Shishir Kumar Bose. The family was in mourning, as Prabhavati had just passed away. Rao handed Shishir a handwritten message in Bengali from Subhas on the letterhead of the Indian Independence League at 3 Chancery Lane in Singapore, dated Sri Sri Kali Puja, October 29, 1943. Now, Subhas had told both Sharath and Shishir that his messages in Bengali would be genuine, while those in English might be intended to mislead the British. Both Shishir and his mother, Vibhavati, recognized Subhas's handwriting. Shishir then put Rao in touch with those members of the underground organization, Bengal Volunteers, who had managed to stay out of prison. Netaji redeemed his promise of setting foot on Indian soil before the year's end by arriving in Port Blair on December 29, 1943, for a 3-day visit to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. He paid tribute to the revolutionaries who had suffered there and likened the opening of the gates of Cellular Jail to the liberation of the Bastille. In January 1944, radio contact was successfully established between Calcutta and Netaji in Southeast Asia. One of the earliest messages transmitted did not contain any valuable military intelligence. It conveyed the news of Prabhavati's death. "You look tired," Debnath Das said to Netaji that evening. "No, I'm not tired," Netaji replied. "I heard today that I have lost my mother." In early January 1944, the headquarters of the Azad Hind government were moved forward from Singapore to Rangoon. Having first seen action on the Arakan front in February 1944, the INA moved into northeastern India towards Imphal and Kohima on March 18, 1944. With Kadam Kadam Barahaja on their lips, the INA crossed the Indo-Burma frontier and carried the armed struggle onto Indian soil. Netaji had successfully united Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians in his truly national army, and that was probably his greatest accomplishment. The promised march to Delhi, as we know, was halted in Imphal. The British and Britain's Indian Army, with American air support, were able to break the siege of Imphal after 3.5 tense months and beat back the Japanese forces and the INA from the outskirts of Kohima as well. The military setback in Imphal by August 1944 was followed by a retreat speckled with a few determined rearguard actions by the INA in Burma during late 1944 and early 1945. Netaji retreated on foot from Burma to Thailand with the soldiers of the INA, including the women he had recruited, into a women's regiment named after the Rani of Jhansi, a heroine of the 1857 uprising. A dangerous trek under constant enemy fire in late April and early May 1945, it helped fortify his reputation as a selfless and fearless leader. On the morning of August 15th, 1945, Cyril John Stracey arrived on the veranda of Netaji's Singapore bungalow with 6 models and rolls of paper containing designs for the memorial to the fallen heroes of the Indian National Army. Netaji examined them all and made his choice. "Colonel Stracey, I want this memorial to rise on the sea face of Singapore before the British make a landing there. Do you think you will be able to do it?" he asked. "Certainly, sir," Stracey replied, and with a smart salute and a Jai Hind, marched off to build in record time the edifice bearing the words of their motto, Etmad, faith, Ittefaq, unity or convergence, and Qurbani, sacrifice. On August 15th, 1945, exactly 2 years before India's independence, Netaji issued his last order of the day and a special message to Indians in East Asia. The roads to Delhi are many, he told his soldiers, and Delhi still remains our goal. The sacrifices of your immortal comrades and yourselves will certainly achieve their fulfillment. And he was right. After the Red Fort trials, it became clear that he had been able to accomplish his strategic objective. Never for a moment falter in your faith in India's destiny, Netaji confidently declared to his sisters and brothers in Southeast Asia, India shall be free, and before long. He had said in Hindustani on the 4th of July, 1943, Hum zinda rahe ya mare wo koi baat nahi hai. Sahi baat ye hai, ahm baat ye hai, Hindustan azad hoga. Whether we individually live to see India free or not, he had said, India shall be free. Jai Hind.
I think we should take some time to absorb this journey, because I thought it would be a different narrative, but the way that you have articulated the period, it requires a certain amount of time to absorb and understand the weightage of that period of Netaji's life within us.
It is, of course, a very moving story. And even as I was narrating it, even though I know the story very well, one cannot help but just wonder about this extraordinary man, one man in the search for freedom.
In fact, I must say that I have a personal anecdote here, in the sense that during our teenager days, your father's this specific narrative came as a part of the series in Anandamela, Boshubadi, which we used to wait to read every bi-monthly, I guess, that magazine used to come. So I have read during that period of time as a teenager, but thereafter when Shumantro's initiative created the English version, I found it equally good and equally thrilling and fascinating. But even hearing it for the third time from you, where many portions of that is actually also mentioned in that book, I must say that there are a lot of emotions that gets spread from that event. So what I would do is I will just do a time check, because I am fully aware that you are in Calcutta, and there are some COVID protocols that is holding the night curfew from 10 o'clock. But at the same time, there is this interesting card behind you, the same card that your father took. And there is also the fact that it is a Audi brand now, and Audi is 100 kilometers from where I am right now in Ingolstadt, though maybe, if I'm not wrong, this car was manufactured in Chemnitz in Germany at that point in time. Does this car run? Is it working condition?
It is in working condition. It was restored a few years back with technical help from Audi. And in fact, every week, as part of the museum exhibit here at Netaji Research Bureau, Netaji Bhavan, the car is driven down the driveway up to the gate. And children who come here are absolutely thrilled to see this car move. In fact, after the restoration, then President Pranab Mukherjee came to unveil it, and I actually drove the car from the rear staircase up to the gate on that occasion.
So that was your role play, kind of.
Playing my father. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Bose, of course, we had also structured this session as a Q&A discussion because we have many enthusiasts, as you know, who has joined all across. And I had also publicized it in the sense that you have a purpose of answering some questions as well. But at the same time, I can see that two great scholars are in the same frame, who, in my opinion, have written the two best books on Netaji, Brothers Against the Raj and His Majesty's Opponent. And hence, I can't leave the chance of having Professor Gordon come in here with any commentary from his side or any questions from your side. Professor Gordon?
Yes, okay. I want to try to connect something that Anita raised in her opening comment and something that Sugata touched upon, and that is the fact that Subhas stood for, represented, expressed that there be an India that include all communities, and that religion, although he was privately a very religious man, that in public life, all communities should be represented with no prejudice against any particular community. And as Sugata discussed, the travels of Subhas from Germany to Southeast Asia, he chose a Muslim companion, and in the last journey, a Muslim companion. And throughout the operation of the INA, there be fellowship between communities and mutual respect. And I think this is a very important issue that touches on matters not only in India today, but in other places as well, including the United States and Europe. So I wondered if Sugata could just enlarge a little bit on the ways in which, long before 1941, Subhas had reached out and tried to bring together different communities in public life in India.
Thank you, Lenny. I think you have stressed the most important aspect of Netaji's life and work as it pertains to the challenges facing contemporary India and the world. Now, Subhas Chandra Bose grew up in a predominantly Muslim quarter of Kotok, and he wrote that he had very close Muslim friends and teachers and neighbors. And then his political guru was Deshabandhu Chittaranjan Das. And so within the Calcutta Corporation, for example, in 1924, as chief executive officer, Subhas Chandra Bose was very keen to give proper representation to the Muslims who were terribly underrepresented at that time. And in that endeavor, even Mahatma Gandhi supported him. And if you read his speech at the Maharashtra Provincial Conference, over which he was asked to preside in 1928, this is after his return from Mandalay prison, he talks about the need for cultural intimacy among India's different communities. And, you know, while both Mahatma Gandhi and Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose worked for Hindu-Muslim unity and equality for all the religious communities and linguistic groups of India, I think Netaji was a step ahead in one way. In the 1920s, Gandhiji wanted political unity. He had very close friends among the Muslims, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, Maulana Azad. But at that stage, he did not even dine with his Muslim comrades. At that stage, he wasn't in support of intermarriage. But I think in a way, Netaji influenced him, because Netaji was committed to Hindu-Muslim equality and unity throughout his life. In fact, in the picture that I showed you of Subhas Chandra Bose in his bedroom in December 1940, sitting by his bed is Abdul Rahman Siddiqui, who was the Muslim League mayor of Calcutta at that time. And as you can see, in addition to my father, it was Mia Akbar Shah of the Northwest Frontier Province who played the key role in his escape. You have already pointed out that it was Abid Hassan who was his sole Indian companion on his submarine voyage, and Habibur Rahman on his last tragic aeroplane journey. But even in between, just consider the commander of the 1st Division of the INA, which fought in Imphal, was Muhammad Zaman Kiani, the man who fought bravely in and around Kohima was Shahnawaz Khan, and also the young Mehboob Ahmed. As I mentioned, the INA Memorial was built by a Christian Anglo-Indian officer of the Indian National Army. And of course, the British made a terrible error of decision by putting on trial 3 officers of the INA, 1 Hindu, 1 Muslim, and 1 Sikh. And there was a slogan in those days, in November, December 1945, Lal Kile se aaye awaaz, Saigal Dhilan Shahnawaz. And I think this was the aspect of Netaji's ability to unite everyone that impressed Mahatma Gandhi. And a Gandhiji who did not dine with his Muslim comrades in the early 20s had completely changed by the 1940s. When he went to see the INA officers, they said that in the INA, we had absolutely no differences. And here the British are serving us Hindu tea and Muslim tea. And Gandhiji asked, why do you suffer it? And they said, we don't. We mix Hindu tea and Muslim tea half and half and then serve. The same with food. And Gandhiji smiled and laughed and heartily approved. So, that was the spirit. And today in India, the atmosphere is so vitiated by the spreading of the poison of religious hatred. There are hate speeches that are being given, and those who are in government are not uttering a word in condemnation. This is not the way to honor Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose in the 125th anniversary of his birth. But I'm confident that the common people of the South Asian subcontinent will still follow the ideas that Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose had represented in his life of struggle. Thank you very much, Lenny, for bringing up this point and giving me an opportunity for elaborating on it.
Shaiba, I think you should have some other questions from people, whether from Anita or anyone else who wants to pose one.
Well, let me make one comment. Thank you, Sugata, for giving a very concise history of Netaji's escape from Calcutta, from his parents' home, to the end of his life. And I think you really presented this in a very gripping manner. Of course, his life had a lot of drama in itself, and I hope that this drama may help us also bring across the more emotional part, which touches people maybe more directly than a factual analysis alone, and bring across the idea of unity. And another aspect which as a woman, I would like to mention, of gender equality, because there are 2 aspects which I find very distressing in India today. One is the divisiveness along communal lines that you mentioned, and the other one, I always feel very much ashamed by the fact that India has the reputation not only of being the largest democracy, but being the country with the highest degree of violence against women. And the champion of gender equality, Netaji, would have been absolutely shocked and distressed about this. So I do hope that at least for some people, the 125th anniversary will help them remember Netaji's ideas and ideals, and maybe give them an impetus to contribute in that direction.
Yes, thank you for emphasizing that other aspect of his commitment to gender equality. Now, of course, there were huge personal sacrifices that had to be made, not just by him, but by your mother and you. You were left behind as a 2-month-old daughter when he went on his submarine voyage. And of course, our grandaunt Emily had come in January. She was present and in early February as well. And I know that in addition to the touching Bengali letter that he left for my grandfather, Subhas Chandra Bose, he also wrote a letter on the morning of 9th February, just before the submarine departed, which Nambiar brought back to our grandaunt Emily. And she was asked to stay on in Berlin for a while, just to show that everything was normal before going back to you in Vienna. But in his public life, he had always believed in gender equality. And just as I mentioned that he believed in the philosophy of cultural intimacy among India's different communities, something that went far beyond just tolerance, but getting to know each other, being intimate with one another. So also from the 1920s, he was talking about empowering 3 large communities: the laboring masses, by which he meant the peasants and workers, the depressed classes, by which he meant the subordinated castes, and the women of India. So gender equality was, in fact, very high on his agenda throughout his political life.
Could I just add just a little footnote? You know, I've tried to write about Subhas Bose as well, and there was some differences between the brothers, rare but there, on women's education. And Subhas said high school and marriage. And Subhas said women should be allowed to develop their talents just as men develop theirs, and should go as far as they can. And so the younger daughters of Subhas Bose went on to higher education. And this was the influence of Subhas Bose in a very personal and familial way as well.
Okay.
And maybe one aspect which I think formed him in a very essential way was the fact that he grew up in a country, in a part of the country which was predominantly Muslim. Sugata referred to the neighborhood in Cuttack, but also Bengal was, after all, the majority of Bengal was Muslim, and he experienced and learned very early to stand against the division which was attempted in 1905 already. Or not only in 1905, but 1905 in a more prominent manner.
I have a few questions that had come from some people to whom we had asked to send questions. So I'm just referring their names because these questions have already been answered. Because I guess, Professor Gordon, you preempted this question, and Dr. Puff, you too. So this was in Bangla. So I will just put the Bangla first. নেতাজি সুভাষ চন্দ্রের সঙ্গে জওহরলাল নেহরু সম্পর্ক নিয়ে এত বিতর্ক কেন? শিক্ষাবিদ কৃষ্ণ বসু 2015 সালের এপ্রিল মাসে একটি নিবন্ধে লিখেছেন, যদি তিনি ফিরে আসতেন দেশের ইতিহাস অন্যরকম হতো। ধর্মের ভিত্তিতে দেশভাগ তিনি প্রতিরোধ করতেন। ধর্ম নিয়ে অতি মাতামাতি ভেদাভেদের দর্শনের রমরমা চলছে আমাদের দেশে। বর্তমান ভারতে সুভাষচন্দ্র বসুর প্রাসঙ্গিকতা কতটা? এটা লিখেছেন দীপেন্দু চৌধুরী, একজন সাংবাদিক। And I guess this was more or less the Bengali version of the polarization topic that you raised, Dr. Gordon, and Dr. Bose has already answered that. There is another question that has come. We talked about polarization. We talked about women's empowerment in Netaji's vision. There is one area which perhaps I just want a short comment from you, Dr. Bose, which has come from Mr. Tarun Kumar Sarkar in Kolkata. He says, in the context of present-day situation of our country, what could be Netaji's message to the people, particularly the youth of India?
To the
Sorry.
youth,
Yeah.
To the youth, Netaji would always advise that they must follow a life of service. Now, no one can be expected to make the kinds of sacrifices that Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose did, but nevertheless, I think he would have wanted the youth of India to do well in their own careers, but at the same time, try to devote themselves to some degree to the service of the poor and obscure in their country. But I think in the present day context, I will really have to return to the theme that we have already emphasized. There is a very deliberate and determined attempt being made to promote the politics of religious majoritarianism. And I think Netaji would have firmly stood against that kind of an attempt, and he would have stood for equal rights for all. As you know, there was a completely discriminatory citizenship amendment act that was railroaded through Parliament. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose believed in equal citizenship. Even if you think about the Azad Hind government, he not only united religious communities, he completely undermined the British theory of martial races and castes. So among the professional soldiers who joined the INA were many Punjabis and Pathans, but among the civilian recruits were people from South India, mostly Tamils. And we have seen how he also had a women's regiment in the INA. And he had a concept even of overseas citizenship. And in Malaya alone, there were 230,000 overseas Indians who took written oaths of allegiance to the Azad Hind government. And they came from all communities, all castes, all classes. And these were presented by Bhulabhai Desai at the Red Fort trial to make his argument that the Indian National Army had fought a war of independence under a duly constituted government. So really, equality and respect for all is the message that I think we have to adopt as Netaji's greatest ideal in the present context.
I will move to a few other questions. This one has to do with history, maybe a bit more specific than the issues that we talked about. This is coming from Mr. Alok Basu Chaudhary. And because I have two historians here, I have the possibility to ask this. He's raising the topic of Raja Mahendra Pratap Singh, who was the president of the Indian government in exile in Kabul during First World War. But later, during the formation of the Azad Hind Fauj and the Azad Hind government in Southeast Asia, he seemed to be keeping a distance, and the effort that he had put himself earlier in 1915, he seemed to be in a withdrawal mode. any historical perspective on that specific behavior of Raja Mahendra Pratap Singh? I'm not sure whether this is a too specific question, but it has come, so I thought that I will put forward to you.
Let me just say this, that during the First World War, there were attempts made to instigate mutinies among Indian soldiers. For example, in February 1915, all the way from Lahore to Singapore, there was a very serious attempt at trying to overthrow the British. There were also small-scale armed insurrections that were planned with the help of German and Turkish arms and so on. But these were repressed by the British. And of course, Raja Mahendra Pratap and Ubaidullah Sindhi had set up a provisional government in Kabul, but that was a government announced by what could be described as a revolutionary cell. There were at least two major differences with the Azad Hind government that was proclaimed by Netaji in Singapore in October of 1943. One, of course, was the degree of international recognition that the Azad Hind government received at the time. But much more important is that this government had a very large civilian base of support. There were nearly 3 million Indians spread all across Southeast and East Asia, and an overwhelming majority rallied to the cause of the Indian National Army and the Azad Hind government. And in this context, the point that I just made a little while ago is pertinent, that even in colonial Malaya, as I pointed out, at least 230,000 Indians took written oaths of allegiance. So that makes the Azad Hind government qualitatively different from attempts that were made during the First World War. So in short, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose succeeded where the attempts of the period of the previous World War had faltered. Finally, I'll just say, not so much directly about Mahendra Pratap, but talk about another figure who went to Japan in 1915 and had played a major part in anti-colonial politics since the period of the First World War, in fact, even before. This is Rashbihari Bose. And Rashbihari Bose not only had the grace and dignity, but he also had the pragmatism to hand over the leadership of the Indian independence movement in Southeast Asia to a magnetic leader who could galvanize all of the Indians in Southeast Asia. So every day when I come to Netaji Bhavan, I actually hear the recording of Rashbihari Bose's speech on the 4th of July, 1943, where he's saying, "You might ask me what I have been in Tokyo for, or what present I have brought for you." And then he says, "Well, I have brought for you this present," pointing to Subhas Chandra Bose. So I think Rashbihari Bose did the right thing in anointing Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, who was already by that time one of the top 3 leaders of the Indian nationalist movement, alongside Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. So he was the one who could earn the trust of everyone in the Azad Hind movement. And also, as we've pointed out, he was the one who had the implicit trust of the minorities in a way that even Mahatma Gandhi probably did not.
Thank you.
The other small addition is that Mahendra Pratap did not have a base in India. Subhas Bose was recognized not only by the Indian diaspora, but also by foreign governments, because they knew that he had been the president of the Indian National Congress. He was widely supported and respected, whatever his differences with Gandhi. So that's the big difference that we see between First World War, sporadic efforts here and there, trying to smuggle arms into India, as was tried, and other efforts, and that of Subhas Bose during the Second World War.
As a non-historian, I wonder whether there's not an additional aspect more from the psychological and social side. The general public, I think, was far more in support of the independence movement when during the period when Netaji was active than during World War I. I think many of the people were more moderate, you might say, in their demands and their thinking. If you look at the generation of Netaji's father, or essentially also Gandhi, he was his contemporaries to some extent asked for less, I would say, than what the leaders in the 1930s and 1940s went after.
Yeah.
I am again conscious of the time and the fact that we have crossed the hour mark. I would just have one last question for you, Dr. Bose. This is a very pertinent question, in my opinion, in our times. We talked about the political polarization, and you would know that the fallout of the political polarization in India today is also resulting in polarization of the narrative around a Netaji. And there are millennials who are growing up in this society with a different kind of exposure to Netaji's history that is being perhaps available through them through WhatsApp, Instagram, social channels, rightfully or wrongfully. So what is your advice to the youngster generation who needs to grow up with the philosophy, the life, and the legacy of Netaji? Where and how should they start and sustain their knowledge about Netaji's teachings and work? How do they save themselves from the plethora of fake choices that they might be encountered with?
The first thing that I will say to the younger generation is that focus on Netaji's life and work. Many years ago, my father, Shishir Kumar Bose, who drove his uncle on the Great Escape on this day, had written in an introduction to the proceedings of the first International Netaji Seminar that he lamented the development of what he called a strange and spurious Bose cult. And Leonard Gordon had the first essay in that volume, and he was wanting to have a sober appraisal of India's only soldier statesman in that book. And there were 10 sort of wonderful essays. And I want to say that that focus on life and work is extremely important because there has been a rather deliberate attempt by a small coterie, but supported by a section of the hard religious right, to denigrate Netaji. Some have even reduced him to some ridiculous Baba. And there is always a market for certain kinds of conspiracy theories. Just as there are QAnon conspiracy theorists and propagandists in America undermining US democracy, so also we have similar groups here. So they need to be shunned and rejected. Netaji had a glorious life, and he was the only front-rank leader of the Indian freedom struggle to lay down his life fighting for his country's freedom on the 18th of August, 1945. And I really have to say that I have faith in the younger generation. I see them at Netaji Bhavan. Of course, we have to also use the new technology. We also need to speak in the language that millennials understand. But I'm encouraged every day that I'm here at Netaji Bhavan. We've had to close the museum now because of the surge of the third COVID wave, but the museum was open until quite recently. And when I see children at the computer kiosks in each of the rooms of the Netaji Museum, learning more about Netaji's life, when I hear young people taking their time to go through the museum and the library and having a serious discussion about Netaji's values, his ideology, and so on. And when they come to me to ask me to autograph books that they have purchased, I find that they come to me with serious questions, all concentrating on Netaji's life and work. They don't have very many role models in today's world. And I find that it is amazing that 75 years after independence, in the 125th anniversary of his birth, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, commands the attention as well as the respect of the younger generation. But I will also say to them that, what are we doing here? At the Netaji Museum, for example, we will, of course, hold the traditional Netaji birthday assembly on the 23rd of January. We will be live streaming it to a global audience, but we cannot have a crowd for the first time on Netaji's birthday inside Netaji Bhavan because of the public health situation. But we have a beautiful virtual tour of the Netaji Museum on our website and on our Netaji Research Bureau apps, available both on the Android and the iOS platforms. You see 360-degree views of all of the preserved rooms, Netaji's bedroom, Sharad Bose's room, Netaji's study, all of the rooms in the Netaji Museum. So we welcome young people to come and visit, even in current conditions, virtually. But I will also say to them that there are no shortcuts. We will, of course, try to speak in a language that millennials can understand and can converse with. But in order to be inspired by Vivekananda, you need to read Vivekananda's works. In order to be inspired by Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, you need to seriously study his life and his work of suffering and service. So it will have to be a two-way process. It will have to be an intergenerational dialogue. But I really, in closing, would want to pay a tribute to my father, Shishir Kumar Bose in particular, who never stopped doing Netaji Kaj, Netaji's work, until the last day of his life on the 30th of September 2000. And my mother, who supported him by disseminating Netaji's message in the most creative ways possible, combining travel writing with history and so on. And so the basis exists. Everything connected to Netaji, his own letters, his manuscripts, his speeches, photographs, audio recordings, film footage, they have all been preserved and disseminated over the decades. So a basis exists on which we can tell the next generation the story of Netaji's life. There is so much still to learn from Netaji's book of life. And I'm confident that the younger generation in the whole of South Asia and also beyond in other countries of Asia whose independence he expedited will be keen to learn from the ideas, ideals, and dreams that he has bequeathed to us.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. That's the chairman of the Netaji Research Bureau speaking, yeah, and that is exactly what the narrative needs to be in this kind of situation where you have so much to give in terms of what is there in the museums. I know the curfew starts in 14 minutes. I will not hold you back, but I have a last couple of comments to take from Dr. Gordon, Dr. Puff, and of course, Dr. Martin Puff is silent. I definitely can't let him go without talking about his father-in-law, whom he never met. So, Dr. Bose, I don't know whether you would be able to stay back or not, but please feel free if the situation demands.
I will take the risk. I think I can explain to the police of Free India that I'm, making a small escape from Netaji Bhavan to my home, and the reason why I was held up in
Wonderful.
case I breach the 10 p.m. curfew deadline by just a few minutes.
Okay. So I will take quick closing comments. Professor Gordon, you started off in this Anita Dialogues very tentatively, and then you became soul of this entire series. Today it is coming to an end. Your closing comments. I will miss you, but nevertheless.
Okay, we can be in touch by email. Anyway, I'm glad that we finally roped Sugata in. I felt as if you and Anita and I were sort of holding up the fort until he could come and participate. I just want to underscore something that he said, and which we brought up in the last session, and that is books and reading. Now, this is a very personal thing to me for this reason. I have two highly intelligent grandsons. One just hit 13, and he happened to share the birthday with Sugata's mother. So there was a tie there that was recognized every year on December 26th. And I have been on his case because video games and Instagram rule. And I have been telling him, if you want to move on in life, you have to read. And so the last session was about books. And to underscore what Sugata said, I'm a great champion of An Indian Pilgrim. That is the autobiography of the earlier life of Subhas Bose and the letters in which I had a very small role in encouraging his father to translate. So I say to young Indians, as I say to my grandsons, you have to read. You have to look up from your phone occasionally and read a book. And that will benefit you in the long run, even though the addiction to the phone is very powerful. What you will learn from reading is just more important.
Thank you. I'll come to the Puff family for the closing comments. Who wants to go first?
First of all, I'd like to compliment you, Shaibal, for organizing this program. I know Anita took it very seriously, and I think it fulfilled a need in her. Again, compliments. Today's day, of course, was a splendid example of Pua's competence and his ability to, I must say, I was touched emotionally, even though I know, of course, the history. To bring it up to a point, which message would I have for Germans from the life of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose? But first of all, his life was a heroic life. And of course, Professor Bose mentioned that not everyone can be a hero in that sense. But what I was greatly impressed by his life, his high idealism and his high intelligence, and also equally my mother-in-law, her absolute fierce commitment and loyalty to him. I'm mentioning this because I recognize those traits in my dear wife, Anita. So I have personally a real reason to be thankful to Netaji for very personal reasons. Thank you for conducting this Anita dialogue. Also to Lenny, whom I remember on several occasions, we spoke about it. And again, I was duly impressed by the way the Netaji Research Bureau, Shishir, Krishna, who are, and others, keep up the tradition, and also the way Lenny has been, Professor Gordon has been having this as one of the themes of his manifold scholarly life.
Thank you. Grateful.
Let me also thank Shaiba Giri, first of all, for organizing this series of events. I think it probably turned out to be far more work than he expected it to be when he started out on that, because he had to become a true student of Netaji's life.
Correct.
But he told me the other day that he enjoyed it and felt it was very fulfilling for him nonetheless. And I would also like to thank those of the attendants of many of the sessions that we had for taking the interest in Netaji's life and remembering history, but maybe also getting insights into what could be done during their own life. And I must say, I'm very grateful that my children and my grandchildren also take part of this lesson which Sugata mentioned about the service part. Actually, let me just take one example, so I'm not too long. My granddaughter, Pia, who is 21 now, works as a volunteer worker for the homeless in our home city here. To attendees, I would like to say, take a lesson of the life of Netaji. And I think we had a presentation today, which was very professional by Sugata, who really sort of brought out the drama of the life very well in his presentation. And I think you also sort of tied in together the main themes that we, or many of the main themes that we covered during this last year, and brought out, I think, a very vivid picture of who Netaji was and what his sacrifice was. Thank you as a speaker today, and all those who have been participating in the previous sessions on various topics of Netaji.
Yes. I just wanted to just close this by acknowledging the contribution of the speakers and the guest panelists that we had. That is starting with the very young Dr. Gordon and Rudrangshu Mukherjee, whom we had in the month of March. Then we had Lieutenant Bhatyasha Chaudhary from Rani Jhansi Regiment. Then we had Madhuri and Maya in the month of June. We spoke about Netaji in Europe with Dr. Jan Koolman in the month of July. August was a very fascinating episode. We held it exactly in the middle of the week on 18th of August. So we had again Professor Gordon, Dr. Shobhan Das Gupta, and Netaji scholar Mr. Shumeru Rai Chaudhary talking about and decoding the Taihoku air crash for the audience. And then we talked about the Azad Hind government, Sanjay Chaudhary, the grandson of A.M. Sahai, who was with us. In the month of November, we had Dr. Anton Pelinka and Mr. Kiran Mukherjee helping us decoding Netaji in Berlin. Mr. Kiran Mukherjee's father was a part of the Indian Legion. And last but not the least, as Professor Gordon also mentioned, in the month of December, we talked about books and movies, and we had the renowned film critic, Dr. Shoma A. Chatterjee. Along with Dr. Sugata Bose, I wish to especially my personal thanks to all of you who contributed in making these individual episodes of the Netaji Dialogues or the Anita Dialogues successful and enriched us with your knowledge. And yes, it pegged me to read more, and I read more and more with every episode. So I think we will call it the end here. It is late evening in India. Thank you, Dr. Bose. You have still some more work to do. And it is morning again in New York. Professor Gordon, we will keep in touch. And Dr. Puffs and family wish you the coming week leading to the celebration eventful and a great event. I know a lot of you are lined up for some functions next Sunday. So let's hope that whatever Dr. Bose talked about, preserving the legacy and how the youngsters can imbibe, will be the small takeaways that we have been able to contribute as a part of this exercise. At the end, I wish to just thank one person who has been also very silently beside me throughout this episode of the Anita Dialogues. He has not been visible in the front, but the whole Samprati family has been behind me, including the executive committee. And I want to thank especially Indranil, who has been the silent producer, who has arranged all the logistics. And the fact that we have not encountered any glitches in any of the 12 episodes is all thanks to his great efforts. So good evening, good night, and good day. And to the global audience who joined us, thank you and stay tuned. These recordings will be available on our Facebook and YouTube channels, not just this one, but the 12 episode. And therefore, even if you didn't get a chance to see any one of them, these are rich with content. And I believe that this will come to use one day under a situation where you might need them. So this is Shoibal signing off, and thank you once again. Jai Hind.